It is school holidays, and the first week of the school holidays is completed, and the weather doesn't seem to actually want to give a grip to a little bit of sunshine. So it's perfect for you to settle in with a great book. For those long winter nights and chilly days, and the holidays are a great time for the young ones actually to start reading. What we've done is we've invited Exclusive Books Marketing, Loyalty and Procurement General Manager Batya Bricker to tell us more about some of their great winter holiday reads. Batya, a very good afternoon to you and welcome to Cape Talk.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to your listeners.
You would never believe me, but I actually kind of said to my daughter, you know why John Matham is so clever is because he reads quite a lot. But and I had to have a very serious look during the last holiday, and we are going to do it again during the next 2 weeks of the holiday, is to actually read for 1 hour English a day and 1 hour Afrikaans a day, because it is disappointing to know that a number of children in our schooling system, for instance, are not able to read in grade 4 up to grade 6. And that is why we thought we'd get you on board this afternoon to tell us about the fantastic, great winter reads that we have available. So the school holidays are a great time to get the kids reading. What if we got up to tempt them to get into the reading spirit?
Well, I think what you're saying is spot on, that you need to make time for reading for your children, either to read to your children, and you can do that till they are much older than you think. Being read to is something that's comforting, it's warm, it's something you can do together off screen. So you can be reading to your children much older than what you would originally think. It doesn't necessarily need to be picture books. But either way, to make time for them and for you to be reading and to invest in the time and to kind of really immerse yourself in a story. There's nothing better. And I think the cold weather, if I may say, is very good for books. So I'm very sorry. It's not very nice for holiday time, but it's certainly good for books and for reading. So books themselves and the stories themselves, we've got a number of books on offer, special offer actually this month. And what we've done is we've created a selection. Every month we create an Exclusive Books Recommend selection where we choose the trending books of the month and we feature them. And what we've done for July is we've chosen the kind of old faithfuls, the classics that you cannot go wrong with. So if you pick up a Julia Donaldson or a Dr. Seuss or a Jacqueline Wilson, we know that it's going to deliver. We know that you're going to get hooked and you're going to want to read more. So those are the books that we're featuring from a children's perspective. And in addition to that, we've got over 100 events for young readers and children all over the country, and certainly in the Cape, many in the Cape. Children's events in our stores where we're either doing readings, or there's a Gruffalo in costume, or there's a teen quiz. There's a whole range of events, over 100, happening in the stores during July, and we encourage you to bring your young ones into store, because not only are you surrounded by amazing books and it's that wonderful atmosphere of being in a bookstore can be as evocative as the stories themselves.
Chatting this afternoon to Exclusive Books Marketing, Loyalty and Procurement General Manager Batya Bricker, trying to get your kids into reading books and getting them off the devices. As a matter of fact, you can also read the books on devices if you feel that particular way of actually getting them and motivating them to read. A number of parents will be pulling their hair out of their heads this weekend because it's cold, it's wet, they're inside.
Yes.
Where do I gauge the sort of level of book that I need to introduce my child to?
Well, I think the most important thing is to fall in love with what you are reading. And so it doesn't really matter what the level is, what kind of standard of reading, how fluent a child may be. If they're interested in the topic, and that's true for adults as well, if you're interested in something, in a subject, you will fall in love and you will want to read more. I've raised 3 boys and tried to make them into readers. And they're not all readers, they're not all natural readers. But one of them is really, really into steam trains, believe it or not. And it is only through steam trains I was able to get books on steam, on transport, on some really obscure books on steam trains. And that's what's made him fall in love with books. So it's not necessarily whether he's up to reading it, because in fact it's way beyond his reading level, but because he's so passionate about the subject, he continues to read. And I think that's the trick. It's to find the right book to ignite that spark within the reader that says, oh, I want to know more, I'm going to read.
The Wimpy Kid series seems to be one of those series that every child wants to get their hold on that particular series of books. You've got in-store, you just mentioned earlier on, you've got in-store events that are happening. Where will parents be able to find these events? And I know that, I've got an exclusive books very close to me at Table Bay Mall, and they're always very active with events and inviting, authors around, especially children's book authors around, and they have a sort of an interactive session. Where would we be able to get those details?
Yes, so if you are a Fanatics member, that's our loyalty club, you will be getting a newsletter with all that information, and we encourage you to open the Fanatics newsletter, because that's always a trick with email. It's very difficult for us all to get to the emails we need to get to. So all the information will be there, but you can also follow us on social media, and all the information is there on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, and all the info will be there, and you can always pop into your local exclusive books and get information from that particular store as well. They'll no doubt have posters and things up of the events happening in their store over this time.
Are there any new releases that we need to look out for in the children's book side as well as for adults?
Well, as I mentioned, I think the Dr. Seuss, Jacqueline Wilson and Julia Donaldson are kind of classic authors that have all released something in this month that is certainly worth looking at. So we've got a range of board books that's under the Dr. Seuss. Obviously, Dr. Seuss is no longer alive himself, but under his umbrella. And so it's exactly what you would expect from a Dr. Seuss book. Amazing Animals. It's flip books, where you have a flap to open, so it's interactive and engaging. That's for the sort of younger ones. The Magic Faraway Tree is something that Jacqueline Wilson has turned her hand to, and you'll know the Magic Faraway Tree from the famous Enid Blyton. But what Jacqueline Wilson has done is she's taken the Magic Faraway Tree world, and she's created new adventures with the characters, with the context, but obviously it's sort of more up to date, and it will feel very much like now, and they're going to become modern classics. And then Julia Donaldson, who we know from the Gruffalo, and in fact there are a number of Gruffalo events happening around the country, but her book is called The Bowerbird, and it's about a little Australian bird. You might remember that her previous book was about the go-away bird, the South African go-away bird, which was really lovely to have a South African bird feature in Julia Donaldson's repertoire. But this time she's gone to Australia, and it's a little bird, so sweet, beautifully illustrated, with that lovely rhyming language that Julia Donaldson, who came from theatre, and you can hear that in her prose. You hear that in the book. It's rhythmical, it's got rhythm, it's got rhyme, and it's lovely to read to a child.
If you'd love to join the conversation this afternoon, we are happy to be chatting to the exclusive books marketing, loyalty and procurement manager, General Manager Batya Bricker this afternoon, and we're talking about books and reading, especially during this winter season where you're kind of stuck indoors. You don't have a choice, and the best thing for you to do is to just sit down and sit down with your kids, actually get them to read and get yourself to read. You've got a special offer on the evergreen Danielle Steele books. I think everybody
we've all read a Danielle Steele at some point, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think what we've tried to do, in the same way that we've looked for Old Faithfuls in the children's area, we've looked for Old Faithfuls in the adults selection of exclusive books EBR for July. A lot of what we see in uncertain times, and the research confirms this, is that in uncertain times, people buy books by authors that they know, because there's certainty in that. You know that if you buy a book from a certain author, you're going to get a certain story delivered, and you'll be satisfied. And so this is why, you get these best-selling authors kind of who churn out things year after year after year. Danielle still is one of them. And we have 5 books on special. They each 79 Rand, which is an absolute steal. And we steal. I did not mean to do that.
Excuse the pun.
Indeed. But she is just one of them. We have other books on Exclusive Books EBR as well, that will certainly deliver. You know, if you loved Joanne Harris and you loved what she did with Chocolat, her new one is out. If you love Kristen Hanna, and the millions of fans who have followed Kristen Hanna, there's a new one out from her. So it's certainly a month that's worth revisiting your favorite authors or authors you know that you absolutely loved their previous, and to go in and get the new one.
The story about books, and I know that we've spoken a lot about English books, and we've just featured a number of very sort of broadly English books, but yes, Afrikaans books are so important, and this is where the children are lacking if they've got English as a first language and Afrikaans as a first additional language. They don't call it the second language; they call it a first additional language these days.
Okay.
In terms, it's not a second language anymore; it's your first additional language, and then English is your first language. So, Afrikaans, and the saddest part of all this, Batya, is that if the kids fail Afrikaans, they probably will fail the standard. So,
yes.
Do you have any Afrikaans books on the shelves, and how big is your selection of Afrikaans books on the shelf?
Yeah, so I think the selection of Afrikaans children's books is dependent on the store and where the store is located. Because our stores don't buy books, we don't buy books centrally. We don't have like a central warehouse. Each Exclusive Books is buying their own range of books, and that means that the range in Table Bay is going to be very different to the range in Waterfront, for example, or Cavendish. So it really depends on that particular store. But it's important that when you go into store, you look for that section if that's important, and ask if you don't find what you're looking for, because then they know that it's something that's needed and wanted. We spoke a little earlier about getting kids hooked on reading and getting kids and adults hooked on reading, and one of the ways is to get them into series, because if you find a book that you love that's part of a series, you'll end up reading the entire series. And I know that my 12-year-old is like that. He'll devour 6 books in a row because it's part of a series, which is what you want. You want that sort of hunger. And the nice thing about books like Diary of a Wimpy Kid is that they've been translated into Afrikaans. So you can get them in English, but you can get them in Afrikaans too. And all those really popular series, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, I can't think of anything off the top of my head now, but any kind of middle grade series that is incredibly popular has been translated into Afrikaans, and you will find it on the shelves.
And if you don't find it on the shelf, just ask somebody, because they will be able to tell you exactly which branch has got it, and probably sort of inter-store transfer that for you.
For sure.
And it definitely will be available. Chatting this afternoon to Exclusive Books Marketing, Loyalty and Procurement General Manager Batya Bricker, and we're talking about reading and reading books in different languages and reading for winter. Also, the other problem that I always find, Batya, is the fact that we have so many different people in South Africa, living in South Africa, coming from the different continents, or the different countries in South Africa, and also from different continents in South Africa. So how wide is that selection outside of English and Afrikaans?
Well, I think, as we speak, Exclusive Books is putting together our homebrew selection, which is our celebration of South African writing. And how that process works is that we get the publishers to submit everything that they would like to be considered, and we get about 250 or so submissions. And then we narrow that down to a sort of very curated list. And what has been staggering for me is to see the enormous range that we are seeing being published just in our country alone, never mind internationally. And a few things have cropped up. Firstly, there's something in possibly every genre, you can now find South African books in those genres, which is very exciting. It means that if you want to read fantasy that's based in South Africa or an African context, you can now. You couldn't have done that, say, 10 years ago. There weren't really any African fantasy books, for example. Black superheroes, for example, is something that we're starting to see that's new. You wouldn't have been able to find that 15 years ago. So I think that the diverse voices and the diverse stories it's better than ever. And there's a complete blossoming, and you really can find a voice for everything. Whatever you're looking for, whatever you're interested in, you will find.
And it's absolutely fantastic because we are a country of 11 official languages, but
Yes.
the demand is not in all 11 official languages. And we were just chatting now saying that, mother tongue education is so important, and it is not necessarily Exclusive Books or the bookstores out there, their duty to put those books out, but to get the government to start cultivating that particular foot, that sort of foundation that is needed for children, and to get them, because if you get them interested in reading in their mother tongue, they will obviously expand and read in other languages also, and it is just such an important thing. Chatting this afternoon to the Exclusive Books Marketing, Loyalty and Procurement Manager, Batya Bricker, telling us exactly what to read for winter and what is coming up in their stores, so you can visit any of their stores. Also, Peppa Pig parties and Gruffalo full costume appearances. So take the kids out, get them away from home. If the rain gives you a break, go to a shopping mall. I'm sure there's underground parking where you can get the kids dry and get them into the mall. Batya, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. It's really much appreciated. And
thank you.
Thanks a lot. Batya Bricker chatting to us.